"It's over, Dad," she smiles, while my wallet and phone slide into evidence bags. She doesn't see the gray folder open or the recorder that remembers better than blood. Betrayal thinks it won. The room turns colder when fathers keep records. My name is Randall. I'm 64 years old. Back in Mobile, Alabama, the police station smelled like dust and old printer toner. It was the kind of smell that stuck to the back of your throat, like paper fibers floating invisible in the air. The kind of place where people walked in, nervous, and walked out, changed. Walls painted in that faded beige no one ever picked on purpose. Fluorescent bulbs flickering with a faint electric buzz. I had been here twice before, once to bail out a buddy who drank too much during Mardi Gras, and once when someone hit my truck in a Walmart parking lot and drove off. Both of those times I'd stood in the lobby, leaning against the counter, waiting with my arms crossed. I was an outsider then, detached, watching people shuffle through like cattle. But this time I was the one behind the door, and the door sounded different from the inside. Heavy, like a vault. When it closed, you felt it in your bones. It had all started 3 weeks earlier, on a Sunday. The kind of Sunday that makes you trust your life a little too much. Bright skies, air so warm it made the pine trees hum with cicadas, the smell of fresh-cut grass drifting from the neighbor's yard, coffee in my favorite chipped mug, steam curling lazy into the morning air. I'd waved at Mrs. Turner next door as she pulled weeds, the two of us exchanging the same small-town smiles we'd traded for decades. Then Sierra arrived, my daughter, my only child. Her car always rattled a little before the engine shut off, and that morning was no different. She came up the steps in her church dress, balancing a Tupperware dish wrapped in aluminum foil. Chicken casserole, I could already tell. She made it every Sunday after service, or said she did. Sometimes I wondered if she picked it up from the deli, but I never asked. "Need help with anything, Dad?" she'd ask, setting her purse neatly on the counter, as if even her bag knew how to behave. I hadn't thought much of it. She was my girl. She had Carla's eyes, dark and sharp, but her mother's softness, too. At least that's what I used to think. After Carla passed, it had been just us, me and Sierra against the world. I'd trusted her with more than I should have. My will, my financial power of attorney, my bank passwords, only in case of emergency. I didn't know she was the emergency. The officer's boots echoed on the tile as he walked over to the evidence desk. I listened to each step like it mattered, like they carried pieces of my life away. Every clack, another fragment. My wallet, my phone, my identity reduced to 2 plastic bags sliding across a counter. "What's the charge?" I asked finally, my voice calm, low, the kind of tone you use when you want control of at least one thing. He glanced down at the folder, his eyes moving like he was reading a grocery list. "Financial fraud, misuse of state pension funds. You're being processed under Alabama Code 13893. The words didn't slam into me. They didn't shock. They just sat heavy in the air like wet clothes on your back. "Interesting," I said, because I hadn't touched those funds in months, not since I'd been in the hospital with pneumonia. The smell of antiseptic still came to me at night sometimes. Tubes taped to my arm, the nurse telling me to breathe deeper, even though my lungs felt like wet rags. I was recovering slower than I let on. Sierra knew that. She'd stepped in, offered to help with the bills, with the accounts, with the endless forms insurance seemed to invent just to break you down. Apparently, she'd helped herself too. The buzzing light above flickered as she walked past me, phone in hand. Not my real phone, but the decoy I kept in the drawer. The one I'd swapped out last night when I saw the notifications. Wells Fargo fraud alert, Chase overdraft, a wire transfer I never made, notarized and submitted from a town I hadn't visited in years. The only person who had access was her. "Sierra," I said as she passed. My voice carried just enough weight to make her hesitate. "You sure you got everything?" She stopped, just for a second. Not long enough to seem guilty, but long enough for me to notice. Her hand gripped the strap of her bag a little tighter. Her shoulders rolled back the way they did when she wanted to look taller, stronger. She leaned in, close enough that I caught a whiff of her perfume. Sweet, floral, innocent, the same scent Carla used to wear on Easter mornings. "It's over, Dad." The words were crisp, almost tender, like she was putting a dog down and trying not to cry. But her breath trembled, and she never looked me in the eye. Because she didn't know I hadn't played my last card. She thought she'd buried the trail. She thought because she'd deleted the emails, shredded the paperwork, and handed in the doctored wallet, that she was safe. But what she handed over wasn't my real wallet. That one sat in a sealed envelope at my attorney's office in Birmingham, notarized, time-stamped, and tucked with every receipt from the last 6 months. Real ones, the kind that prove where you weren't when someone else claimed you were. And the phone? The one she handed over looked legit. Same lock screen, same scratches on the case. But it wasn't mine. Mine, the real one, was already logged in from a secure locker at the bus depot downtown. Synced, uploaded, untouchable. And it held every recorded call, every message, including the one I'd captured a week ago, the one where she said, laughing, "He trusts me too much." That's why it'll work. One-party consent. Alabama law. Perfectly legal. I sat on the bench and let her strut. Let her play the dutiful daughter in front of the officers. Her voice rose slightly as she spoke to them. "Dad's not... well, he's been slipping. Mentally. I think he made some mistakes with the money and didn't want to say anything." The younger cop, the one logging evidence, glanced at me, just briefly. A flicker of doubt, or maybe curiosity. I didn't flinch, didn't argue. You don't argue when someone's digging their own grave. 3 weeks ago, I would have believed her. 2 weeks ago, I nearly did. Grief and sickness make you second-guess yourself. But then the bank called, and then the county clerk's office called about a property transfer I'd never authorized. I started asking questions. She started avoiding answers, so I hired someone, private investigator, quiet, professional, former state trooper, the kind of man who didn't advertise in the yellow pages, but whose name passed quietly among people who needed things handled right. He found the notary who witnessed my signature, only it wasn't my signature. And the notary? She'd been fired 6 months ago for forging affidavits. Her stamp had expired, but someone had used it anyway. In the interrogation room, the officer returned with a clipboard, his face unreadable, but his hands betrayed the monotony, a little too casual, like he'd done this 100 times before. "You understand you're being booked, Mr. Coulter?" I nodded. "I understand." Sierra smiled sweetly behind him, that same church smile. "I'll make sure everything is handled, Dad. You won't have to worry about a thing." "Oh, I'm not worried," I said. And I wasn't. Because just 2 hours before they arrested me, I'd uploaded everything. Voice recordings, scanned receipts, property deed inconsistencies, to a shared folder, and sent it to one name. Sergeant Anita Morales. The very sergeant who was about to walk in. Some men yell when they're accused. Some beg. Some cry. I just watched. Because people will show you who they are when they think no one's looking. And Sierra, she thought no one was. She thought she'd orchestrated the perfect betrayal. Wallet, swapped, phone, wiped, evidence, replaced. She forgot one thing. I used to teach fraud investigation before I retired. The evidence bag sealed with a snap. The fluorescent lights above clicked again, buzzing like an insect trapped in a jar. In that stale room, with the old air conditioner rattling near the vent, she thought it was over. And for a moment, everyone watching did too. But the twist was coming. Because what she forgot, phones keep backups, wallets keep trails. And fathers keep records. The air inside the station turned heavy, not with heat, but with tension. The kind of tension you can't see, only feel. It pressed on my chest like a hand, subtle, almost invisible, the way the atmosphere changes before a thunderstorm. You don't notice it until it's everywhere. The hum of the printer in the corner kept going, a dry, mechanical sound that had no place in moments like this, yet somehow made them worse. The click-clack of the keyboard, steady and unbothered, as the officer typed in my case number. Routine for him, life-altering for me. The thud of a pen against a clipboard as someone signed off on my processing. And beneath it all, her voice. Dad's been confused lately, Sierra said softly, like the words hurt her to say, like she wanted them to sound like compassion, not calculation. Ever since the pneumonia, he's been forgetting things. Dates, passwords, even people. Her voice cracked in the middle of people I'd known her long enough to hear the rehearsed catch, the false tremor. It was the same one she'd used when she was a teenager and wanted to stay out past curfew. A carefully measured break, engineered to pull sympathy. But this wasn't curfew. This was my life. And she was talking to the sergeant now, Sergeant Anita Morales. 5'9", sharp-eyed, shoulders squared like she'd been carved out of authority itself. Wore her badge like armor, her ponytail like a sword. She didn't smile often, which made her good at her job. A smile in this line of work was a liability, a weakness. People trusted you more when you smiled, but they also lied to you more. Morales didn't play that game. I knew she'd be here today because I asked her to be. Last night, when I called her. Mr. Coulter? She'd said, answering on the third ring. Her voice was firm, but not unkind. Sergeant Morales, you remember helping me on that identity theft case back in 18? I do. Why? I'd paused then, long enough for my pulse to steady. My hand had tightened on the phone, knuckles white against the receiver. I think my daughter's trying to frame me for fraud. The silence on the other end lasted 2 seconds too long. Long enough for me to hear the faint shuffle of her papers, the faint exhale of disbelief. That got her attention. We talked for 42 minutes. I sat at my kitchen table, the one with the coffee ring that never washed out, staring at the cracks in the linoleum while I laid it all out. The fake receipts, the notary stamp, the suspicious wire transfers that came from towns I hadn't set foot in since the 90s. I told her about the decoy wallet, the swapped phone. I told her how Sierra smiled a little too quickly when I said I'd be checking in with the bank. The way her voice tightened, then smoothed out again like she was ironing a wrinkle in real time. I told her everything except one thing, what I had on tape. Because some cards you don't play until the table is silent, until every eye is watching, until there's no way for the trick to be ignored. Now standing by the intake desk, Sierra turned up the performance. She got him to the hospital just in time, she whispered, leaning toward Morales, just loud enough for the sergeant to hear. I did everything. Set up his bills, sorted his meds, handled his calls. Her words painted a picture of sacrifice, dutiful daughter, long-suffering caretaker, the kind of role people admired without question. Morales gave a polite nod, lips pressed in a flat line. Then her eyes flicked toward me. No expression, no tilt of the head. But I caught it. A flicker, quick as lightning. She knew, and Sierra had no idea. The officer behind the counter set my file aside and picked up a plastic tray. The kind used for holding evidence too bulky for bags. He placed my decoy wallet and the decoy phone inside. Carefully, respectfully, like he believed they mattered. And for a moment, I almost respected her too. Not because she got away with it, but because she came close. You see, betrayal by a stranger wounds the ego, but betrayal by blood, that breaks the spine. The first time I saw Sierra lie was at age 7. She'd stood in front of her teacher, chin lifted, hair in crooked pigtails. She told her class she'd done her science project all on her own. A solar system made of styrofoam balls, painted by a hand too steady for 7. I'd spent 3 nights cutting, gluing, measuring orbits. She smiled, accepted the ribbon, posed for the picture, never said a word to me about it. Back then I thought it was harmless. Just a kid wanting to shine. Now I know better. Some kids outgrow lying, some grow into it. As Morales sat at her desk, she gestured Sierra over with a slow flick of her hand. No urgency, just control. Let's go over the timeline again, she said. Sierra leaned in, crossed one leg over the other. Perfect posture. Voice smooth, rehearsed. Well, after Mom passed, Dad started forgetting to pay things, so I stepped in. I had his power of attorney, but I never touched his pension. I swear. If something was withdrawn, it was probably him clicking the wrong buttons. She went on, each word polished, each gesture deliberate. Her hands moved like punctuation, slicing the air for emphasis. Her voice grew more confident with every sentence, layering the story with the kind of detail liars think makes them sound more truthful. The officer beside me tapped harder at the keys, keystrokes sharp, metallic, each one another nail in the coffin of the man Sierra was building out of lies. A forgetful man, a burden, a story she controlled, until Morales raised a hand. Hold on, she said, flipping through the file in front of her. Her brow furrowed. Sierra blinked. Something wrong? The sergeant didn't answer. She flipped another page, reached under the desk, pulled out a slim gray folder from the bottom drawer. This wasn't part of the evidence Sierra handed in, and I knew this was ours, the real file, the one we built. You said the property transfer happened in May, Morales said. Her voice was calm even, but the calm of a blade pressed flat against your skin. But this notarized affidavit has a date in June. That's odd. Sierra paused. Too long? Well, maybe there was a delay? Maybe, Morales replied flatly. She tapped the paper once like a judge's gavel. And this notary, Cheryl Dawkins, know her? Sierra hesitated. She might have been the one the bank used. She doesn't work for the bank, Morales said. She was fired in February. Morales placed the gray folder on the desk, slowly, like laying down evidence at trial. The keyboard tapping behind me stopped. Silence fell, heavy, suffocating like wet wool draped over the whole room. That was the first crack. Small, barely noticeable, but real. Sierra adjusted her blouse, smiled nervously, tried to float above the weight of it. Look, I'm not sure what this is about. I only brought in the wallet and phone because I thought it would help clarify things. Her tone shifted, just a hair, a note of defensiveness creeping in. But Morales wasn't done. She opened the gray folder wider, revealing a photo, grainy but clear enough, a blurry shot of Sierra at the UPS Notary Center. She was holding a folder, the same one the false affidavit came in. Dated, time stamped, submitted under her name. Morales tapped the corner with one nail. This security footage says otherwise. That's when Sierra's smile vanished. Gone. Just like that. She glanced at me. For the first time, she looked unsure, and that's when I leaned forward. I told you, Sierra, I said calmly. You forgot something. She tried to recover fast. You seriously think I forged something? Me? Dad, come on. This is crazy. You've been sick. You're just confused. Morales slid another page across the desk. Then what's this? It was a printed email from my Wells Fargo account, logged in under Sierra's IP address. The timestamp matched the same night my pension was rerouted. Sierra's voice thinned. Maybe I was just checking it for him. You also changed the routing number, Morales replied. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Flat, icy, a statement, not a question, and requested a new password. No answer. Just the sound of Sierra swallowing her next lie before it escaped. The officer beside me looked over. His eyes lingered on me, then shifted back to her. You said she brought in all the right items, but these don't match the ones on your record. They're decoys, I said simply, my voice steady, unshaken. She got to the house before we did. Took my phone and wallet from the drawer. The officer nodded, almost to himself. And what did she miss? I looked at Morales. She nodded once. "Show him," she said to the tech. A screen blinked on. The audio file played. My voice, her voice, a week ago. Sierra, "I know how to move it around. He never checks the balances." Me, "And the power of attorney?" Sierra, "Still valid. He signed it in 2022. As long as he doesn't revoke it, I'm golden." Then laughter, her laughter, the kind that seals a verdict better than any signature. The silence after the recording ended was different. Not tense, not thick, just cold, unavoidable, final. Sierra stood slowly, as though her legs had turned to stone. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape hatch that didn't exist. "Is this really happening?" she asked. Her voice was small now, barely hers. Morales didn't answer. She didn't need to. The younger officer picked up the evidence tray. His tone had shifted too, firmer now. "You'll need to stay while we sort this out." Sierra didn't move. The authority flipped. Just like that. Her voice had sounded bold an hour ago. But now? Now she sat quietly. And across the desk, Morales slid the real folder toward her. The one stamped with Sierra's name in thick black ink. Fraudulent filings, notary violations, recorded theft. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a matter of paperwork. They took her into the secondary room just after noon. Not a cell, not yet, but close enough. One-way mirror, chain link partition. No exit without a code. I stayed seated. Same bench, same spot. The cold didn't bite this time. It couldn't. I wasn't the one being processed anymore. My body remembered the chill, but my mind had warmed to the math of evidence. Numbers over nerves, timelines over fear. I could hear faint voices through the glass. Sierra pacing, heel scuffs on cheap tile. The scrape of a metal chair pushed too far and dragged back again, asking for a lawyer. Her voice cracked on the word, because it meant something now. Not a threat you toss into an argument, a lifeline you clutch when the water is darker than you thought. I'd seen that room before, years ago. That's where they kept suspects before the formal interview. Gave them just enough rope, enough water, enough time to believe their version might hold. The room was designed for silence to get loud, for the clock to take sides. If you've never sat in one, you don't know the way minutes grow teeth. And today, she'd brought her own. An officer unlocked the storage drawer beside Morales' desk. Metallic clack. Hinges creaked like they'd been asked to keep too many secrets. Inside, a gray locker box. Labeled, locked, mine. She pulled it out, set it gently on the desk, and keyed in the code I'd given her. 3 pings. Then the latch clicked open. Inside were 2 things. My real phone, the one synced, encrypted, and loaded. A manila envelope with a red stamp across the seal. Notarized June 3rd, 2023. Filed Jefferson County Clerk's Office. Morales looked over her shoulder. "You ready?" I nodded. There are only a few times in life when a nod means more than a speech. This was one. She opened the phone first. The screen glowed. Familiar background. Carla on our anniversary. Arms around a younger me. Sunlight in the lens. She tapped into the secure folder, labeled simply, Sierra. Ping. She turned the phone toward the officer who had processed me. He held it like it might shift the balance of the day. Fingers braced along the edges. Thumbs careful not to smear a single pixel. Call logs, text messages, transfer requests, email notifications, all time-stamped, geolocated, scrolled once, twice. "This matches the dates on the falsified withdrawals," he said quietly. Not triumphant, not shocked, just certain. The way a carpenter says a beam is level. Then looked at me. "You knew this was coming?" "I knew enough," I said, which was true. I knew the shape of the fall, not the height. She opened the envelope next. Inside, every original receipt from the past 6 months. Gas stations, doctor visits, grocery runs. Ink still dark, paper still stiff, all stapled to corresponding bank charges. A breadcrumb trail through ordinary life, and each one notarized on the same day I'd suspected the setup had started. It wasn't paranoia, it was practice. When you teach fraud, you learn to live like your future self will need evidence from your past. She handed him the packet. "Take a look at this," she said. The officer read silently. Then again, slower. His lips moved just enough to show he was tracking the totals. The times. The last 4 digits. Police are trained to see what's missing. Fraud asks you to see what's been added. Her version of the receipts show a Target purchase in Montgomery on April 17th, he said. I nodded. That's the one. These show the real purchase was in Gadsden. For groceries. Same timestamp. Different total. He ran his finger along the notarization, tapped the clerk number, and this stamp checks out. She edited the PDFs, replaced the originals, filed them into my wallet, and now they were side by side. Hers, flimsy, unverified, with pixelated logos, letterheads that bled at the edges, barcodes that didn't scan, addresses 1 digit off like a shadow. Mine, crisp, signed, certified. You could feel the raised seal under your thumb. You could smell toner that wasn't a cheap refill. I heard her voice again through the wall. He's doing this to me. He's setting me up. Desperation. Wild now. The performance unraveling thread by thread. Panic has a rhythm. It speeds up, skips beats, then crashes. The officers didn't respond. They didn't need to. Facts don't argue back. They just wait. They sit in folders and drives and drawers and let time do the heavy lifting. Morales slid a flash drive into the computer. Footage played on the monitor, a split screen of Sierra entering 2 buildings. 1, the county records office. 2, the UPS notary store. The cameras were high and indifferent, capturing the choreography of a plan that thought it was invisible. Same day, back to back. In her hand, the exact same manila envelope. But the kicker was the timestamp. 4 hours before she called me crying about suspicious withdrawals. 4 hours before she claimed to be helping me log into my account. 4 hours before she smiled and said, "Don't worry, Dad. I'll figure this out." She had already planned the theft, then blamed me for the fire she lit. Morales leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. She had the posture of a person who respects gravity, lets it do its work. She left a longer trail than she thought. "She's smart," I said, "just not patient." Patience is the tax you pay for getting away with things. She didn't like taxes. You're lucky she didn't drain you completely. She tried. But I had redundancies, taught financial crime for 23 years, never trusted any system without a backup. Looks like that paid off. The officer walked in from the back room. "Mr. Coulter," he said, holding a printout. "We also ran a trace on the POA document she used to move your pension account." And it was filed digitally, but with the same expired notary stamp. Someone rescanned it with a new date overlay, but we caught the metadata. The edit timestamp was last month. By her laptop, he tapped the header. IP address matches her home. Wi-Fi ID too. Morales nodded. That gives us digital forgery. Minimum 5 years. Her tone did not celebrate it, just placed it on the table like a heavy book. "Any priors?" the officer asked. I shook my head. "First offense, that I know of." "But not her first lie," Morales said under her breath. "The kind of sentence you don't write in a report, but you remember anyway." They called her back into the room. She walked slower now, no performance left. Just calculation, the kind that rattles when you shake it. The chain on her purse clinked softly. She had always liked the sound of small jewelry, tiny chimes that said, "Look at me," without asking. She saw the phone on the desk, the folder, the screen with footage paused on her face. The still frame had that security camera harshness. Blue-white, unforgiving, no filters, no angles. For the first time, her eyes widened, not dramatic, human, Sierra, Morales said, you want to clarify anything before we proceed? She didn't speak, just stared at the flash drive, the little metal rectangle that remembered more than she wanted it to. Her own reflection hovered faintly in the monitor, a ghost built from pixels. Her mouth opened, closed. The first time she spoke, the words were barely there. You said you didn't want this, Dad. You said you forgave me. The sentence wobbled on the last word, as if forgiveness were a chair she expected to find and didn't. I did, I said calmly, until you made sure there was nothing left to forgive. I kept my voice level. No sermon, no thunder, just weather. She slumped into the chair. The collapse was quiet, like a tent folding in on itself when the pole slips. No outburst, no denial, just air leaving a plan. Just a daughter realizing her father never stopped watching, not out of suspicion, out of habit, out of the kind of care that double-checks the locks and sets the coffee for the morning. Because in America, everything leaves a trail. Digital logs, paper footprints, clerk stamps, notary codes. She thought she could erase them, replace them, rewrite the story. But the truth was patient. And the truth? It was time-stamped. It was also signed, countersigned, archived, and mirrored to an off-site server because an old man with pneumonia decided 6 months ago to be the kind of person his future self could thank. Records we have. Sierra stared at the pause frame of herself on the monitor. People rarely recognize their own posture. The camera had caught hers exactly, chin forward, shoulders set like she was stepping into a story she'd written for someone else to read. I remembered the first time she lied for real, not the science fair, high school. She said she was at a study group and came home smelling like bonfire and beer. I'd wanted to shout. Carla had sat her down at the kitchen table and talked about trust like it was a bank account you deposit in every day. Sierra had cried, promised. The next morning she made us pancakes. Extra blueberries. Lies are sweet at first, then they ferment. A knock somewhere down the hall. Papers shuffled. The copier warmed up, releasing that soft, dusty heat. I pictured the forms rolling out at a steady pace, black letters arranging themselves into the shape of consequences. Chain of custody labels peeled and affixed, each sticker a stitch, pulling the facts together into something that would hold. I stood, stretched the stiffness out of my legs, and sat again. 64 fills every chair. On the far wall, a bulletin board held flyers for community outreach, scam alerts, neighborhood watch meetings. Do not give your bank info over the phone. I almost laughed. The warning was a decade too late for the trick we were living. Morales checked her watch. Old school analog, black band, small nick on the bezel. The kind of watch that keeps time even when the world pretends not to. She looked at me. When this is over, she said, you go home with someone? I'll call my neighbor, I said. She'll sit with me. Saying it out loud made me feel both foolish and human. Morales nodded once. Good. In the secondary room, Sierra shifted. The chair squeaked. She used to hate that sound. As a kid, she'd put felt pads under all our dining chairs so they'd glide without squeal, as if harmony were the same as kindness. I wondered when she decided noise was a tool. Across the glass, her shoulders lifted, dropped. This is ridiculous, she said, but there was no heat left in it. The sentence was a habit, not a stand. I closed my eyes and could almost smell cut grass. Sunday mornings, Carla humming in the kitchen, the sound of Sierra's sneakers skidding across the linoleum. Time had a way of stacking layer on layer until today pressed up against a decade ago and called it by its first name. I opened my eyes to the screen. The timestamp blinked in the corner. The smallest pulses. Proof that even in stillness the truth keeps moving. And the truth? It was time-stamped. They didn't cuff her. Not yet. But the scrape of the chair as she stood, that sound said everything. A hollow drag against tile, loud in the quiet, like metal teeth pulling across stone. a sound you don't forget. Her posture folded inward, shoulders hunched, arms wrapped tight across her chest. She looked smaller than I remembered, like she was trying to hold herself together with her own hands, but it was too late for that. You can't hug yourself back into innocence. Morales stood across from her, badge glinting under the dull overhead lights. That badge had presence. It wasn't gold or silver. It was authority, weight, history. It made the air between them hard. She set two folders side by side on the desk with deliberate care. One was mine, the other hers, labeled Sierra Coulter, suspected financial misappropriation, civil claim, number 22-481B, Jefferson County Clerk of Court. The black ink on that folder was darker than anything in the room, because it was real now. No rehearsal, no family excuse, no backtracking to misunderstanding. Let me explain, Sierra said quickly, breath breaking between syllables. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I just wanted to move some funds around until Dad recovered. No, Morales said firmly. No hesitation, no sympathy woven in. The word landed like a gavel. You moved funds into an unregistered LLC. Your LLC. Under an alias. She flipped a page. Her nails tapped once on the paper, sharp as punctuation. Carson Holdings. Filed out of state. Wyoming Registry. You thought we wouldn't trace it? Sierra blinked, lips trembling. I needed the money. The words escaped like a dam finally burst. Loud, rushed, echoing against the cinder block walls. Her voice didn't fill the room the way she hoped. It emptied it. The officer across the desk placed a second evidence tray beside the first. The thud of it against the surface echoed like a verdict. This one didn't hold my wallet or phone. It held hers. Her own devices, pulled from her purse during the hold. Her lifeline, now turned into evidence. Inside, bank records, transaction trails, proof of every redirect she'd tried to cover up. The paper was thin, but it cut sharper than any blade. Morales picked up a document from the tray, a wire record pulled directly from Sierra's phone, the same one I'd flagged from my pension account. $28,700, rerouted into a Chase business account under Carson Holdings. Numbers don't lie, not when the trail is this clean. Who helped you set this up? Morales asked, eyes steady, voice flat. Sierra looked down, jaw tight. A pause too long. Said nothing. They gave her one more chance. To tell the truth? To cut a deal. But betrayal has layers, and she'd stacked them too high. Too fast. One false document might have slipped through. Even two, if luck had bent her way. But a full scheme? That was conspiracy. Her silence stretched, the weight of it louder than words. The tick of the clock filled the gap. So Morales nodded at the officer. He opened another drawer, pulled out a stamped packet, and placed it in front of her. You've been served, he said. His voice carried no venom, just duty. The civil claim. Fraud, theft, identity abuse under Alabama Code 13, a 970, filed that morning. By me. That was my revenge route. Not screaming, not slander, just truth. Documented, filed, undeniable. And now, the law was taking its turn. As Sierra sat frozen, Morales turned to me. There's one more thing. Her tone softened, not gentle but measured, like this part mattered differently. She reached into the gray folder, pulled out a small envelope. Financial lockout form, filed last week, notarized. She slid it across the desk. The paper whispered against wood. My signature, her signature, state seal. Effective immediately, Sierra was removed from all financial authority. Power of attorney revoked. All shared accounts frozen. Property deeds secured under individual trustee hold. Every key she thought she held, gone. You revoked it? Sierra whispered, her voice breaking into disbelief. I looked at her, not angry, not even cold. Just finished. I warned you. Twice. Her lips trembled. She bit down on the bottom one like she was trying to keep from crying. What am I supposed to do? Live with it. Because I did everything right, I trusted her, then checked her, then stopped her. Not out of vengeance, out of necessity. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. And I'd surrendered too much already. They didn't arrest her that day, not yet. They gave her time to call an attorney, to process the paperwork, to understand what was coming. The justice system moves slow, but its shadow falls quick. But the moment she walked out of that room, she wasn't my daughter anymore. Not in the way that counted. I stayed until they finished logging everything. Every page, every file, every device sealed and labeled. Bureaucracy is slow, but when it moves right, it's final. One last detail. Morales walked over, handed me a sealed envelope from the fraud unit. Inside was a reimbursement claim from the state. Full pension reinstatement plus protection status. The final seal. The end of her attempt. As I stood to leave, I heard her voice once more from the hallway. "Dad?" I didn't answer. She tried again. "Dad, please." Still, I said nothing, because some silences are heavier than words, and this one, it carried the full weight of truth. The sun was already sinking by the time I stepped out of the station. The glass doors groaned shut behind me, and for the first time in hours, I was breathing air that wasn't filtered through stale vents. Alabama heat still clung to the air, wrapping itself around my shoulders like a damp coat. But there was a breeze now, the kind that carried grit and relief in equal measure. It pushed through the sycamore trees, rustled the flags along Government Street, made them snap hard against their poles like rifles firing in sequence. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang, the sound drifting slow, deliberate, like it knew exactly what hour it was closing on. I didn't rush, didn't look back. Inside, Sierra was still with her lawyer. I pictured her voice low, rehearsed, bending facts into shapes that might look like mercy if you squinted, trying to soften the blow, maybe even salvage her version of the story. But that story had already ended. I made one stop on the way home, the county courthouse. The building loomed quiet at dusk, its windows catching the last smear of light in the sky. I'd walked those halls before, but never with steps this steady. Second floor, records office. The hallway smelled of floor polish and old paper, that blend of bureaucracy and permanence. Behind the glass window sat a clerk, middle-aged, hair graying at the roots, readers perched on her nose, a sonic big gulp sweating onto a coaster beside her keyboard. She looked at me like she'd seen 100 men walk up with folded documents, most of them nervous, a few of them resigned. "Need to file this," I said, sliding the last piece of my plan across the counter. My hand didn't shake. A revocation of beneficiary rights, tied to the living trust my wife and I had set up years ago. Sierra's name had been listed next to every asset, the house, the retirement, even the little lake cabin up in Tallapoosa, the one where she caught her first fish and cried when we made her throw it back. Not anymore. The clerk adjusted her glasses, read it line by line, lips pursed in quiet approval. Then the rubber stamp came down, hard, red, final, filed under case record number C2983J. The trust was now held under a neutral fiduciary, impersonal, sealed, untouchable. No more loopholes, no more back doors, just closure. Back at the house, I sank into the familiar indent of my living room chair, flipping through the day's mail with fingers that felt older than they had that morning. Everything looked the same, but sameness is an illusion. The porch lights still clicked on at 7:15. The neighbors still had their Georgia bulldogs, flag fluttering stubbornly on the fence. My dog, Duke, gave one lazy bark before circling twice and collapsing at my feet, warm and loyal in a way money could never buy. But I wasn't the same. I couldn't be. The landline rang at 8:04 p.m., that old rotary buzz, heavy and insistent, a sound from another era, one I kept alive out of habit, out of preparedness. I'd always said emergencies needed a cord, not a signal. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through soft. Too soft. Controlled in a way that told me she'd practiced it before dialing. Dad, I know you think this is unforgivable, and maybe it is, but I panicked. After Mom died, I didn't know how to make things work. I thought if I could just move the money around, pay off a few debts, I'd fix it before you noticed. A pause, long enough for regret to pose as sincerity, then quieter, almost breaking. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Click, no number left. Just silence after. She still didn't get it. It wasn't the money. It was never the money. It was the manipulation, the planning, the smile that came too quick when she thought the lie had landed, the quiet mockery of everything I'd built, everything I'd trusted her with. She didn't just break the law, she broke something deeper. And some things, once broken, don't come back. 3 days later, the formal charges were filed. Financial misappropriation, forgery, wire fraud, civil claim pending a full audit. Her name typed cleanly into black and white lines. A daughter on paper, a suspect in reality. Her face never made the local paper, but it didn't need to. In mobile, news travels faster than ink. The courthouse board listed her name right under upcoming hearings, week of September 22nd. That was enough. For her, for me, for everyone who mattered. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. Return address, Shelby County Jail. The envelope was thick, creased at the corners, the kind of paper that carried words heavy with explanation or apology. I didn't open it. Didn't need to, because closure isn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about choosing what not to carry. People ask me now, how'd I see it coming? I tell them, I didn't. Not at first. But when your own daughter looks you in the eye and hands over your phone and wallet to the police, smiling like she's just saved the day, you start to understand what betrayal feels like, and once you feel it, you never forget it. There's a moment I keep coming back to. Right before the arrest, when the officer slid the folder with her name across the table, and she looked up, confused, like it hadn't gone according to plan. That look? That was the exact second the power shifted, because she thought betrayal sealed my fate. Instead, it sealed her own. She forgot something important. Phones keep backups. Wallets keep trails. And fathers keep records. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.